Greetings and thank you for joining us. I'm Daylily Alvarez, librarian, co-chair of the Native American Cultural Committee. On behalf of everyone at Chicago Public Library, welcome. Today's virtual program is another in our ongoing series of literary, cultural, and civic programming in honoring Native American Heritage Month. Today, it is my pleasure to welcome Agnes Woodward, activist, speaker, grassroots, community organizer, co-owner, and creator at ReeCreations. Ms. Woodward is a designer and creator of ribbon skirts. Recently, her ribbon skirt artistry has been recognized internationally, and one of her creations was worn by Secretary of the Interior, Deb Haaland. This was worn at her swearing-in ceremony earlier this year. Before we begin, I would like to read Chicago Public Library's Land Acknowledgement, written by the American Indian Center. The Chicago Public Library is located on the traditional homelands of the Council of the Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Ottawa, and Potawatomi nations. Many other tribes, such as the Miami, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Sac, and Fox, also call this area home. The region has long been a center for Indigenous people to gather, trade, and maintain kinship ties. Today, one of the largest urban American Indian communities in the United States resides in Chicago. Members of this community continue to contribute to the life of the city and to celebrate their heritage, practice traditions, and care for the land and waterways. Agnes, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to talk about your creations, your inspirations, and I'd like to start with a question for all of us here who are new to your creations today. So for those learning about ribbon skirts for the first time, what is the story about them and their significance to Native traditions?
So from what I have read and what I've been told, ribbon skirts really come from the late 18th century when silk ribbons, made their way to the Great Lakes region after, the style became less extravagant in Europe. And so all, this material began shipping over here, and as much as we traded across, nations all across the U.S. and Canada, our Indigenous people began using ribbons and coming up with their own ways of adorning their clothing. And so if you look at photos from, as far back as you can go, you will see different nations, whether it's Cree in Canada, Ojibwe, Menominee, Arikara, women all wearing their fully stacked, half stacked ribbon skirts, even with just one or two rows. And so they today really represent our individual styles, but also after years of oppression through assimilation policies, many of us Indigenous women and Two-Spirit believe that they are a reminder of our matriarchal power that we carry. Ribbon skirts carry stories of survival, resilience, love, sacredness, and as survivors of genocide, we wear our ribbon skirts to stay grounded, stay grounded in our teachings, to remind us of our values and how to carry ourselves. They allow us to stay connected to the earth and, to our ancestors.
Thank you. And how long have you been sewing ribbon skirts? How did your style and creative process evolve from when you began to sew them?
So I began sewing ribbon skirts about 7 years ago. About 10 years ago, my husband bought me a sewing machine because I wanted to make my children powwow outfits so that they could dance at, the powwow, because I couldn't afford, to pay somebody else to make them. So I wanted to learn. I had never had anybody show me or teach me, how to combine colors, how to make a pair of pants for like a grass dance outfit or a shirt or a dress, and I just kind of figured it out myself. And about 7 years ago, I started making my own ribbon skirts for different ceremonies and things that, where it's custom for women to wear ribbon skirts. And I started making them for myself and my daughters. And then I started learning how to do applique artwork.
Mhm.
And that took me quite a while to really get the hang of it. Um, but once I started doing applique, it just became um, so exciting that every time I sat down feeling like I don't know what I'm doing right now, like I'm just kind of trying to figure this out. But also knowing that what I was doing is really an expression of who I am, an expression of myself. And it's also, cultural expression. It's a way for me to connect to not only me as a person, but me as an Indigenous woman. And so when I'd sit down and I'd be so nervous, and I draw things out, and I do the applique, then I sew it down, and you flip your piece inside out, and you see what you've created, and it actually worked. It's beautiful. The colors go like it's such an empowering feeling, especially as an Indigenous woman who at one time carried a lot of shame as a child being First Nations due to racism that I experienced. It was a very healing process for me, and just doing it, working as often as I could on different designs and ideas that I had and colors that I would think of. People started asking me to create for them because there's not a whole lot of people that can create these ribbon skirts or even power outfits. And once I started taking orders, it just felt like it just never stopped since 2017, and 2017 is when we really started ReeCreations between my husband and I. But my designs have become a lot more modern, um, not so. And some people might have an issue with how modern and contemporary our designs are. Like there's designers who put cartoon characters on their ribbon skirt, but again, that's an expression of ourselves, and we have a right to do that, regardless of the day and age. So
That's great. What kind of would do you have like a favorite cartoon character or someone you would put on a skirt?
I actually don't have a favorite, but my favorite one that I've done so far is a Baby Yoda ribbon skirt. And when I got asked to make a Baby Yoda ribbon skirt, I was very, very excited.
Oh, that's so great. And is this your favorite style, or do you have a favorite style or skirt that you have sewn or commissioned?
Yes, absolutely. I think my favorite style or my favorite ribbon skirt that I've made will always be the MMIW G2S ribbon skirt. You can see one behind me. Um, and MMIW G2S, for those who don't know, stands for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two Spirit. And this one I will always hold dear to my heart because when I first made it in 2017, it was to represent my aunt who was murdered. It was to help my mother through her process of, fighting for justice. It was to bring her comfort. And really, what it ended up being is quite an iconic ribbon skirt I've made over 300 of them for Indigenous women, Two Spirit, who are family members who have a loved one that's been missing or is murdered, for politicians. It's been at Congress, I think 3 times, when discussing important laws that pertain to MMIW. And there's advocates and activists all over the US and Canada that now have that design. And it's not just my favorite because it's so popular, but because of the meaning behind it. And because when I created the first one, I felt a lot of emotion. I felt the important, I just felt how important this design was. And I wanted it to really mean something to my mother. And I just never imagined it would mean something to all of us. So that'll always be my favorite design.
That is so great to hear, and I'm so happy that you have been able to give life and meaning to voices that have been silenced, and to voices that have yet to be heard through your creation. And we also want to talk about your skirt that you commissioned for Secretary Deb Haaland. What was the symbolism or the meaning that you would like to share behind that skirt?
So when I first got a message through a friend from Deb Haaland about what she would like, she had sent, our connection photos of corn, and she wanted corn to represent, her Pueblo roots. And she had been looking through my social media page, ReeCreations, and she saw some ribbon skirts where she liked the layout. She liked, and just explained that, there's a skirt on there that had 2 butterflies, and she really liked that. And it's kind of become like my signature thing to do that. Whatever the design is, I will put little 4 pointed stars, or I'll put big 4 pointed stars. And so when I drew it out, I drew out a corn stalk and butterflies and some stars, and I, put that on there, and she loved it. But basically that's what she had in mind, was the corn to represent, her nation. The others were added just because she liked the butterflies, and I just had to do the stars.
Oh, that's so nice. Do all of your skirts, do they tell a story, or is it just kind of like up to what the person who is asking for the design, like what they want?
Yeah, both. I mean, almost every ribbon skirt I do does tell a story. And it's become quite often that when Indigenous women or Two-Spirit want to order a ribbon skirt, it's with a deep purpose. And I hear stories, like I said, of survival. I hear so many stories of resilience. I hear stories of accomplishments that they want represented. Sometimes it's to make a political statement, whether it's for, the Indigenous children whose remains have been found at, residential schools in Canada and here in the US, boarding schools, whether it's something to represent that. And more than a political statement, it's our connection to each other as relatives, regardless of US, Canada. Indigenous people believe that we're all related. And sometimes I just want, these colors, and I really love eagles or bears, or I just really love, a certain floral design. Sometimes it's something simple, that's just something that they like, and it's for a fashion purpose, going to a wedding, to their graduation, going to an important meeting, presenting, whether it's for a water protector. It's all across the board. I have ribbon skirts that I own that don't have any applique, for days that I just want to wear a ribbon skirt without a design. And I have ribbon skirts that are specific to like the MMIW movement, or, one that I'll wear on September 30th for Orange Shirt Day. But yeah, it's all across the board.
Oh, that's so great. Thank you for that. Do you have any skirts that you've created or that you're currently working on that you'd like to share?
Yes, I do have some photos I can share.
Oh, great.
Of my most recent orders. And usually I ask permission from whoever the ribbon skirt is made for, if I can share, the meaning. And with permission, I am sharing these with a little bit of the backstory. So this ribbon skirt is kind of a different design for me. It is for Farm Credit Canada. And Farm Credit Canada is a bank, with their corporate office in Regina, Saskatchewan. And they were wanting to have a custom ribbon skirt made that represented farms across Canada with their logo. Well, they didn't want their logo, but I wanted to put their logo because it just tied the two together. And they're going to have this framed and hung in their corporate office. And I had a hard time doing just a farm scene. So I decided to take their logo and just put a floral design around the logo. And you can see at the four corners of their logo, I have four little stars. And so that is my most recent one that I've completed. And the ribbon colors, you can see I used at least 6 different shades of green to, represent fields, and then a sunset, because they believe that, that kind of scenery is a way for farmers to connect, all across the lands, is that beautiful scenery when the sun is going down.
That's gorgeous.
And here's one, for example, somebody wanted just a floral design. And so I, just took the colors that they wanted, and I came up with a floral design, added my 4 stars. And so this one doesn't have like a super deep meaning other than the Indigenous woman who bought it and ordered it. She wanted to, she tries to always wear a ribbon skirt when she presents and when she, does her speaking gigs, just for the representation, just to take up space, And this is the Baby Yoda ribbon skirt that I did. Totally just loved it. I was super excited to do this one. And of course, you can see the stars. To make it a little more feminine, I did add a little bit of flowers to the Baby Yoda. And I have done quite a few other Baby Yoda ribbon skirts, but not a Baby Yoda applique. It was just the material that was Baby Yoda. Those can be seen on my social media. Everything I create can be basically seen on my social media, Facebook and Instagram. Now this one was for a beautiful young lady. Growing up, her grandmother always said that she had choke cherry eyes. And so her father wanted her design to really represent that, that connection that she had with her grandmother, and her calling her choke cherry eyes. So I just made a large design with choke cherries and the little flowers to show that, that's what they are, is choke cherries. And with each ribbon skirt, you can really see how different the color combinations are. This is one of the hardest processes besides coming up with the design, which is probably the second. So the first part is choosing a material, right? And then the second part is how much ribbon to put on. And then it's also just finding a way to make all of the colors come together on each design. And I'll even go back. So with Baby Yoda, because he's green and brown, I had a hard time. And the woman who ordered this skirt, her favorite color is turquoise, and I know that. So you can see that I used yellow in between the turquoise and in between the green to really bring those 2 colors together. And it's almost like a gradient of the 2 colors. And so I've really, through that process, have learned that. And you can see how the burgundy brings the red and the purple together. And then there's a gradient of purples, just to show how, I choose colors. And sometimes it can take, like, I can work at it, and then, sometimes I'll have to walk away, or sometimes I'll have to go look for more ribbon. And if you're a ribbon skirt maker, you know that you can never, ever have too much ribbon. And so here's one of the more meaningful designs that I created. And you can see on this ribbon skirt, she requested, I just call them tags on the side where the ribbon skirt peeks out of the skirt, and we cut it so that it looks exactly how, each ribbon on the end there looks. But, this design represents 2 parents mourning, and the 2 eagles represent, the little ones that she lost. And it's ribbon skirts like this that I feel the greatest pressure, because it's such a deep, meaningful um, ribbon skirt that is supposed to represent something um, very, very important, to the person who's going to wear it. And so designs like this typically take me sometimes a couple weeks, because as soon as they explain what it is, I'll start, visualizing many different ways that I can express what they've told me, express their story. And it just, sometimes I'll draw things and I'll, iron on the applique, I'll cut it all out, put it together and hate it. And then I'll have to start all over. And so it's really quite a long process to come up with, these really meaningful designs. And talking about, my favorite design, the MMIW G2S, here is myself and some of the other women within the movement that I really look up to. And quite often, I will make these ribbon skirts and gift them to women who I know have gone above and beyond within the movement for other family members. And that's a really important, value as an Indigenous person to carry, um, because being there for each other, watching out for each other, and being giving and kind in a time of need is really, going back to who we are and how we really should be carrying ourselves. And so each one of these women are really powerful um, advocates, family members, and activists within the MMIWG2S movement. And so I gifted them each with one of the designs. And there is Deb Haaland wearing her ribbon skirt, and there is me finished right after I finished making it. And it wasn't even at home that I finished. I had worked on most of the ribbon skirt, but I had to sit down, lay the ribbon down, sew it on, put all of the design together, iron it, and then sew it down. And I just felt like I had to get it done. Wasn't really given a finish date, but I knew, I had a couple weeks. And so we went to visit some relatives, and she had a sewing machine. I was like, can I use your sewing machine? And it's like a small beginner sewing machine. So it was a tiny machine for me compared to what I'm used to. But I sat there, for 6 hours, and I just finished the skirt. I dropped it off where it needed to go, and I just waited because I was pretty nervous. I just wasn't too sure if it was real, if it was going to really happen. And so I waited till I got word, but nobody really said anything. And then I opened my phone that day and I seen her, lacing up her moccasins with her ribbon skirt on, and I just about jumped out of my chair, and I'm like, it's for real, it's really happening. I'm so excited, so happy. But I was in such a rush to finish her skirt that I almost didn't take a photo. And my friend, my sister friend, she was like, stop, we need to get a photo. Like, this is such an iconic moment. This is huge. And I was like, okay, so we took that photo, and I'm so glad we did, because it's my proof. And so here is what I think of as a contemporary design. It was made for somebody that I've known for a very long time. We grew up together in Saskatchewan, in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, one of the cities, that I spent a lot of my life in. And the person that it's for, I really admire her for her strength as an Indigenous woman, for all the things that she's experienced, including the 60s scoop, which was an assimilation policy in Canada that basically replaced residential schools, and so she's a survivor of that. And I know that she carries a lot, and she's never had a ribbon skirt. And, a lot of our people who've never had a ribbon skirt, feel like they don't deserve one. A lot of that comes, is basically part of, we experience those things. We feel that shame. We feel like we don't belong. We feel like that's not for us because of those assimilation policies, right? That was the intent, was to separate us from who we are in our culture. And so reconnecting now is so important. And when Indigenous women or Two-Spirit tell me that they've never had a ribbon skirt, I get very excited to make them their first one. I always want it to reflect them, their style, regardless of how contemporary it may look. And I wanted to always speak to them and the strength, that they carry. And this specific friend, knowing that I just see her as the most resilient person, as a survivor. She also has this really beautiful pinup style, that, she always has her red lipstick and the beautiful hair updo. And so that's why I wanted to put red. I was like, well, I'm not going to put red lipstick. So what's the next best thing? Well, red nail polish, but I wanted to show that, from her, and I thought about writings from Alex L. and how she talks about flowers are resilient, because even when there are times when they feel like they're dying, they can come back to life and then die and then come back to life again. And that kind of is how we can be, as people. And so that's what those flowers coming from her hands really represent. Of course, the stars are there. And then the moon is just to remind her of the feminine power that she walks with as an Indigenous person. And so that ribbon skirt just really meant a lot to me. I was really very, very heartfelt, and also a little nervous because I've never put hands or a design that looks like a drawing on a ribbon skirt. But she loved it. The feedback was pretty good from others too. So, and this is the ribbon skirt I believe that Deb Haaland was looking at when she chose the butterflies, with the corn stalking in the middle. And so I kind of just went with this concept because that's what she liked, and this was for Carly Harvey, who is a Black Indigenous artist. She is a singer, songwriter, and I believe her style is blues. I've heard a few of her songs, very talented. But when she requested this, it was because she was supposed to be nominated. I want to say it was a Whammy or something. It kind of sounds like Grammy, but it's a different, awards. And she won. And she wore this ribbon skirt on the cover of her, new album. So that was pretty exciting. I was very happy for her. And so those are without taking too much time, that's all
Oh no, those are beautiful. I mean, each of them are so unique. And when you explained, how you put the colors together, it all made a lot of sense. And for me, seeing it as an observer of your art, I was thinking, wow, like she just has like an eye, like you just have an eye for putting those gradients together, and they just flow so seamlessly. It's almost like the colors just kind of all blend, but then they catch, like each of them caught my eye. I was able to see each and every one of them. Mm-hmm. And then like when you put like the appliques in it just kind of ties everything together, and it flows, kind of like a river, but it flows like a story, where like you can see that there's a story there, and you don't really have to know the details, but you just know that there's, a lot of like heartfelt meaning and a story to be told through your art. And it just makes your art just so outstanding, so unique. And do you have any like other like ribbon skirt creators that inspire you or that you are in community with?
Yes, absolutely. There is actually quite a few. And we all really support each other. My goal from all of them is to eventually own a ribbon skirt from each of them, because I myself actually don't have a lot of ribbon skirts because I'm always giving them away, because I know that I can always make myself some, or I can do a trade. I know that they're more accessible to me than to other other Indigenous women. And one of, the greatest compliments we can do is sometimes give the best that we have. And I mean, sometimes that's a ribbon skirt, Um, but Candia Flynn and her husband, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. Candia Flynn, their page is called Healing Stitches on Instagram. I believe they're on Facebook. Their work is just amazing. Their applique. I'm actually wearing one of her ribbon skirts right now. We did a trade, basically an MMIW skirt for an MMIW skirt. And that's just kind of, how we all operate. We kind of fangirl over each other and like encourage each other. And I've invited her to present with me like for ribbon skirt classes and stuff too. Faith Starlight, her page on Instagram is Powwow Styles. I met her years ago. Same thing, full-time mom. She stays home and just creates ribbon skirts. Her work is very beautiful. She does applique as well. Cheyenne Large. She's also out of Alberta, Canada. And she has Instagram. I think she might also have Facebook. But her thing was to create ribbon skirts, but then she would make matching beaded rope necklaces and earrings. And just amazing the way she can like, you see those gradient of colors in the ribbon skirt and then also in like a 3-layer rope necklace. I own one of her skirts, her necklaces and her earrings as well. Rebecca Jarvie, she is Cree from Rocky Boy, Montana. And I believe that's just what her page is, Rebecca Jarvie. She has really taken off with her creations lately. I know she's been in vogue for a really unique mask that she made with beadwork, and I think she made it out of a Louis Vuitton purse. It's beautiful, and I know if you look her name up in Vogue, you'll see a lot of her work. She does fashion shows and things like that. There is, and I don't know her last name, but her Instagram is Made by Michaela, and her name is Michaela. I also own a couple of her ribbon skirts, and I don't know if I've ever seen her do applique, but her stitching is just, it's like perfection. Every time I get a skirt from her, I look at the stitching and I'm like, wow, like this is goals, that's what I aspire to be, that perfect, and I'm getting there. But yeah, there's quite a bit. Ribbon skirt makers, and I can't think of everybody, but those are some of my favorites. Oh, there's one more. I think her name is Deanna Sutherland. Her page on Instagram is Under the Night Sky Creations. I own a skirt of hers and also a jean jacket. She, on the back of jean jackets, will put layers of ribbons and then a design. And they're really beautiful. I have one of those as well. So yeah, definitely some of my favorite ribbon skirt makers out there.
That's amazing. That's such a great, it's just such a great and like significant medium to use, because you're using like fashion to, as activism and to create solidarity, which is very important. And also just kind of, self-expression, like you said, like expressing like yourselves, like expressing your, the people who are creating or requesting your creations, like their selves and like what's important to them and their stories. And that's all so amazing. And speaking of stories, and because we're doing a library program, do you have any favorite storytellers, poets, or books that you've read or reading?
I really tend to like memoirs, and I tend to try to find memoirs written by Indigenous authors. And so my favorite is definitely Helen Knott, and she wrote In My Own Moccasins. I know that she recently did the audio version. And just because I'm such a fan, I'm going to buy the audio version and listen to it, even though I've already read the book twice. But I know that she's also got another memoir that she's been working on I'm not sure when that's going to be released, but I'm really excited because her writing is just so powerful. Like I really appreciate the way that she expresses while empowering, Indigenous people. A lot of her life experiences, I can really relate to and identify with how she puts that into such poetic, empowering, words. She's my favorite.
Oh, that's great. Thank you for sharing. And speaking about, a lot of, what your skirts represent, are there any Native or Indigenous voices that you would like to share for our patrons so they can learn more about supporting?
Yeah, absolutely. The top of my head, I think about Jordan Marie Daniel. Her organization is called Rising Hearts. Many people might already follow her. She's really an amazing advocate for Indigenous people, like on a really large scope of issues. She's really known for her running. She represents a lot of different organizations and companies, with her running, but she had ran a marathon with the MMIWG written on her leg and a red handprint, over her face to raise awareness. And a lot of people recognize her from that effort. But yes, her organization is called Rising Hearts. She's also supported my efforts a lot. Um, as an artist and as a daughter of parents who are both activists, I kind of combine that in my ribbon skirt making, in my social media. I just talk about things that are really important to me. And, residential school awareness, boarding school awareness is really important to me as well. So she's really supported my efforts there. I really appreciate her. Shauna Elk is another artist who I think people should know about. She does amazing quill work. She does amazing bead work. I've owned so much of her work, even dentalium earrings. I try to always support her because she's very talented. And now she's taken, collaborating with her sister, she's taken a lot of her jewelry designs because a lot of them will be like Dakota florals with like dragonflies and stuff. And now she's digitized them and put them on shirts. So she has a bonfire shop that she sells, these designs. And I just think more people need to know about Shauna Elk's work because she's amazing. Um, but Indigenous voices, people that I really respect, within the MMIWG to us movement. Right away, I think of my friend whom I take as a sister is Roxanne White. And I mean, if you Google MMIW, half of the photos, of like marches, you're going to see Roxanne because she's always showing up. And she was in one of the photos that I shared with one of the women that I gifted, a ribbon skirt to. So Roxanne White, Josie Tiwa, Sissy Reyes, Carolyn DeFord, Lori Thomas, Jessica Smith. This is all, MMIWG activists and advocates and family members. Um, Rachel Fernandez, and I'm going to feel bad if I forget anybody, but I also want to acknowledge my good friend, but we call each other relative, is Lenny Hayes. He's really a leader in talking about, two-spirit identity and violence, sexual violence on men and boys, which is really stigmatized and not talked about enough. He's an amazing speaker, presenter, and just somebody I think everyone can learn from. And also Angel Moniz, who is from Twin Buttes, which is part of MHA Nation, Fort Berthold Reservation. She's a powerful, grassroots community organizer. She mobilizes people on many issues. She supports her community like I've never seen. And I think that she's another Indigenous organizer that people can really learn a lot from, especially an effort that she's part of is called Rename Custer Park. And And we don't think about those kinds of things and why it's important, until we have amazing advocates and activists like Angel who step up and take the time to teach us, So I believe her efforts deserve more attention as well.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. And thank you so much for being here with us today. So thank you so much, Agnes Woodward. Tonight's program will be available on Chicago Public Library's YouTube page. So if you have friends or family who weren't able to join us, please invite them to watch this on demand on our YouTube channel. And you can visit our website to find out more books, DVDs, e-resources, and information on Native American Heritage Month events at shypublive.org. Thank you so much.